Acapulco, Mexico. This is Anarchast.
Hey everybody, welcome to Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. I'm really excited to have on our next guest. He's a first-time guest. His name's Amaury Sechet. He's the lead developer for Bitcoin ABC, which is the sort of the lead implementer of Bitcoin Cash. So many of you might know what I've been saying about Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash over the last month or so, saying that it looks to me like Bitcoin itself is, in some degree, been taken over by the globalists, and definitely in one way or another, it has been moved away from its initial idea of becoming digital cash, and now they're trying to posit it as something like Bitcoin Gold. And of course, we've seen Bitcoin Cash break off from Bitcoin on August 1st in the fork at that time, and Bitcoin Cash is trying to adhere to what Satoshi Nakamoto's initial white paper talked about, which is becoming a digital cash. And they've started doing that by increasing the block size to 8 megabit, whereas Bitcoin Segwit, as I call it, the original Bitcoin, has not increased their block size. It continues to have long periods for transactions, and it also has high transaction fees, which they seem to think is totally fine, which is not what the initial idea of Bitcoin was. And so there's been a lot of people, and especially a lot of anarchists, sort of moving towards Bitcoin Cash because of that. So I'm really happy to have Amaury on, and he's coming in from France. And but before we get started, Amaury, I got to check your street cred. How did you become an anarchist?
So I'm a very, logically minded person. I like when things make sense logically, and for a very long time I was very confused in my personal philosophy because there was a lot of self-contradicting idea, in the philosophy out there. Maybe, like the most obvious one for people that are going to be anarchists is, you cannot steal, but, there is taxation, and it's just like another name for the same thing, and suddenly it's okay, and it's even presented as a virtue, in many spaces. So all of that wasn't really, sitting well in my mind. It's like self-contradictory, and so if it's self-contradictory, it must be wrong. And this is kind of like the first seed, and then you start reading around there, and at some point I discovered the voluntarist or anarcho-capitalist philosophy, and I was like, yeah, this is like the different pieces fall together, and
that's great, very cool. And you've been the lead developer on Bitcoin Cash, which is really interesting. So why don't you tell us, why did this all happen? Why are you doing Bitcoin Cash? And even give us a little bit of your background on being a programmer.
Yeah, so I'm a programmer. My diploma is in the distributed system and telecommunication and this kind of stuff. I've been a programmer. I've worked for various companies, but mostly, over the past 4 years, I've been working for Facebook. And at the beginning of this year, I was working on the grant to do research on scaling solution, and this ended up with the creation of Bitcoin Cash at some point, which was not very much the initial intention behind the grant, but this is where the opportunity was, so this is where I ended up going. Yeah, that's pretty much my background as a programmer. As for Bitcoin Cash, this is a debate that is actually very, very old, that predates Bitcoin by a long time, right? So the basic problem is that the more transaction there is on the network, and the more computing resources it takes to process all the transactions. So the more expensive it is to, be an actor in this network that process all the transactions. And when you have a resource that is scarce, some people think that it's better to create a market for that resources and have the market manage it. And other people think that it's better to have a group of experts that says, here is the amount of resources that need to be consumed, and you cannot consume any more of that. And this is a debate that, this is a debate that is way older than Bitcoin, that is probably, as old as, people trade and organize in societies. As a voluntarist, it's pretty clear on which side I fall on. I'm not for having a group of experts that decide how much resources can be consumed. And more than that, I think that it doesn't work, right? Because you have this whole economic calculation problem. When you start putting a resource, then, people, they don't use the resource in a way that makes sense. Suddenly they start to tailor their behavior based on that limit that is artificially imposed. And not only it's suboptimal, but you lose the information you would need in the first place because people alter their behavior. You lose the information that you need to choose the right value. So this is something that it doesn't work. It's been seen in like all kind of country. Maybe Venezuela is the most recent example of that. When you have like a group of experts that try to manage the economy, everything starts crumbling. And this is what we're seeing in Bitcoin right now. So these resources I'm talking about is how much transaction you can send through the network in some amount of time. And the Bitcoin core developers, they decided that, they are the expert, and they decided that this is 1 megabyte and this is what it's going to be. And you see all kind of disastrous economic consequences from that decision already. You see fees that are skyrocketing crazy high. You see confirmation time that are becoming longer and longer and longer. You see less and less people that are like less and less merchants that are accepting Bitcoin as a payment. Actually, there is negative growth there. Like the whole economics of the stuff is crumbling down, like you would expect when you have a central committee trying to plan the economics of the stuff. So this is where Bitcoin Cash come in. We just like decided to remove that limit and have the market figure it out.
Yeah, to me, I'm still trying to get my head around what exactly is going on, whether this is actually a nefarious plot to essentially destroy Bitcoin, or if it's just sort of like by accident or what's going on. But basically, it comes down to me, you have this 1 megabit block size, which to me is insanely tiny. 1 megabit is like what used to have on those floppy disks, like in the 1980s.
It's like it's even smaller than a floppy disk, right? A floppy disk is 1.4 megabytes.
Yeah, yeah, it's less than you can put on a. It's more than you can put, or less than you can put on a floppy disk. From the 1980s, like, and you hear a lot of these guys say, well, if we increase it, it'll cause all these problems. It's like, I don't understand that necessarily. And then you have a lot of the people who are talking about increasing the block size being censored on things like the Bitcoin Reddit. So you've got censorship. You've got something that doesn't seem to make any sense. And then what you guys did was you forked off. I love that term. You just said, we're forking off. And you increased the block size to 8 megabit. And Bitcoin Cash transaction fees are really cheap, which is what the Bitcoin was supposed to be. But you see a lot of these Bitcoin core people saying, "Oh, but it's good if the cost is expensive." It's like, what? So what's your take on all this?
So, in some respect, there is a bit of truth to that. The fact that the fees are crazy high means that there is a very high demand for Bitcoin. So in that sense, this is a sign. I mean, this is not good, but this is a sign that there is very high demand. On the other hand, this should be also a signal for the market that the prices are crazy high, so you need to increase the capacity, right? So if you have a business and you produce, say, widgets, it doesn't matter what, right? And people are willing to pay more and more expensive price for your widget, and this is a sign that you're not producing enough widget and there is too much demand for them. And so if you're a smart businessman, you would, maybe, make extra factory or, contract someone that have extra factories or whatever, right? Like you would find a way to increase your production so you can sell more widget. And maybe, each of those widgets would be less expensive, but overall, you would make more money. This is how the market is supposed to work. So this high fee show that there is very high demand, but it also show that this is dramatically needed to increase the capacity. Where I don't know if it's like, sheer idiocy or, like just a socialist mindset in general, or if there is a bigger plot behind that. This is very difficult to prove either way. I mean, it can be both. And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. We need to fix it. So
yeah, absolutely. But it is interesting. I really wonder what is going on. And you have smart people like Trace Mayer who come out on the side of Bitcoin Core. And we're actually going to, just so everyone knows, we're going to have you come and speak at Anarchapulco. And we've also made sure we have enough people from Bitcoin Core there as well, because we don't want to, I'm still not sure exactly what's going on, but we definitely need to find out what's going on fairly soon here. So we've invited Jimmy Song, which is one of the top Bitcoin Core developers developers. He's also, as far as I know, pretty much a voluntarist, so we're quite comfortable in having him there. I'd like to avoid having any sort of statisters or people like that involved in any way in anything we do, because they're just downright evil sort of people. We don't want anything to do with evil. And so we're going to have Jimmy there. We're also going to have Trace Mayer there. So those are two people who are very pro-core. But we do need to figure out what is going on here, because it just doesn't seem to make sense. They say, okay, we're going to do SegWit. And it's like, well, why? Why not just increase the block size? Like, you're a developer. Like, do you understand what they're even trying to do?
Yeah, so what they want to do is this technology called Lightning Network. And SegWit is like kind of like the first step toward that. And Lightning Network is a technology that allows you to do transaction off chain and just, send a transaction on the chain maybe once a month or, like once in a while. And they have very high expectation. I think they have unrealistic expectation on how well this system is going to perform. If you watch at the initial presentation of that system, this is a presentation by Taj Ria and Joseph Poon. And in that presentation, Joseph Poon makes some assumption and back to develop calculation, and he says that if you want to serve the world with such a system, it would reduce the need for the block size from blocks that are roughly 1 gigabyte to blocks that are maybe 300 megabyte or so. So I think Joseph Poon is optimistic in his estimation, but his estimation makes sense. Thinking that you can do it with 1 megabyte block is just like completely unrealistic. Yeah, that's not gonna work. Like, literally, like if you compute, it would require decades for 1 billion people to open a channel on the system like that. Like, I think Ryan Eggshall made the computation, I think it's like 30 years or 40 years or something like that for everybody in the world to be able to open a channel on such a system. And with a 1 megabyte limit. So it's just like it doesn't work. But, I think some people have bad intention. Some people convince themselves that this is actually a good idea or that there is no better idea. But, you cannot fix people.
What do you think about this Lightning Network? Because when I talk to some people, they will say, well, there's SegWit now and it's getting better. And it's like, well, I haven't really seen that much improvement in terms of speed or cost since SegWit has come in. And then they go, well, then there's going to be Lightning Network. And then it's like, well, when's that coming out? And they're like, well, maybe in like a year. It's like a year. Like, why not just increase the block size?
They tend to oversell their stuff. And I don't know if this is because they deceive themselves and they have too high expectation, or they're actually, overselling for the sake of overselling and staying in some position of power. But they are clearly overselling. I had discussion with core developers several months ago before SegWit was launched. And I was trying to explain that, you would not see any significant capacity increase from SegWit within the first few months. And this is what we see right now. I think SegWit have been activated for 4 months or so. And you see like not even 10% of capacity increase from it. So, I think they just have unrealistic expectation on how well those systems are going to perform. And I think we have a system that have been working for years now that have performed extremely well. This is the system that made the success of Bitcoin. So, let's do that. This is something that works. This is something that is proven.
Yeah. So some of the people have, you go on the internet and you see people saying, "Oh, Bitcoin Cash is trash," and they say things like, actually, I don't understand what their negativity towards Bitcoin Cash is. I think there's something about it's not decentralized enough. I'm sure you've heard of some of the negative things said about Bitcoin Cash. What would your response be to that?
Yeah, so what they fear is that because it requires more computing resources to process a higher number of transactions, what they fear is that less people are going to be able to run those computers that verify the transaction because they are more expensive to run. And as a result, there are going to be less of them and the network is going to be more centralized. This is true to some extent. Where I think they are wrong is that they are looking at this decentralization stuff as the only metric to optimize. But if you have a optimally decentralized system that is not usable, then you have not created a lot of value, right? So you need to create a system that is useful and then make sure it's decentralized enough. And this is where like they are willing to cripple the system to keep it more decentralized. It doesn't make a lot of sense, because if it's like you have a vault and you put some garbage in it, then why do you have a vault, right? Like you need to have something, you need to have something valuable to protect. Otherwise, there is no point protecting it.
Right. Yeah, that's a great analogy. If you're going to just put garbage in a vault, why have a vault? There's nothing there to protect. Yeah, so that's what it's really coming down to. What's your take on how it's been going so far? We've now had Bitcoin Cash since August 1st, so we're it's hard for me to do the math, 9, 10, 11, 12, 4 months. We're about 4 months into it, and Segwit for 4 months. What's your take on how things are progressing? Are you happy with how Bitcoin Cash has gone so far? And what's your take on Bitcoin itself as well? Or where do you see that going with Segwit and Lightning Network? Or do you think it's going to do well or not?
Let's talk Bitcoin Cash first. I think it's done extremely well, right? This is I think the highest valuation for a coin at launch ever. And since then, we saw a lot of growth. It's a bit dwarfed because Bitcoin is in such a bull run right now that most of the eyes are on it, right? But Bitcoin Cash launched at like 500, and it's at $1,500 right now. So you see like 3x since the launch, and it was already the most valuable. The most valuable coin at launch. Like no coin that launch was worth that much ever. So this is we can always do better, but I think this has performed really, really well. On Bitcoin, I think Bitcoin is in a very dangerous position right now because the fundamentals are weaker and weaker. The transaction fee are higher, the confirmation times are higher. And as a result, there is less merchant that accept it. Like even I think this week or last week, there is Steam that stopped accepting Bitcoin as a payment method. There is more and more people that stop actually accepting Bitcoin as a payment method because of those high fee and unreliable confirmation. And what does that mean is that there are people and they look at the history of Bitcoin right now and they see that it grows. They don't realize that the situation has changed, right? And so they don't want to miss the bus and they want to invest into Bitcoin right now. But I would say, this is not where I would put my money in right now.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, when you see the price increase on one side and the fundamental becoming weaker on the other side, you know that either they're going to have to fix the fundamental in some pretty dramatic way, or you are due for a big correction. Like, either I cannot predict the future, but one of the two must happen mathematically.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So one of the things that a lot of people are saying now, and including myself, is if Bitcoin is going to be this Bitcoin gold or whatever they have, these ideas they have for it, and it's not actually going to be digital cash, then there's a massive need for digital cash out there. Then we've seen, you pointed out that so many people used to use Bitcoin on their website to sell things. Many of them just can't anymore. If they have low price products, if their product's only $10 or $20 and the cost of a transfer is $3, it really doesn't make any sense. It's like, why would you use that over PayPal or credit cards or anything else? So there's a definite need for digital cash out there, and some of the front runners obviously are, of course, Bitcoin Cash. I would say Dash, Litecoin, maybe Monero a little bit as well. Those are sort of, in my opinion, the top sort of four in the running for digital cash. How would you say, what would you say when people say Bitcoin Cash is better or worse than, say, Dash or Litecoin? What would you tell people that why Bitcoin Cash is better than those?
Okay, so compared to Litecoin, I'd say it's pretty easy. Litecoin essentially has the same roadmap as Bitcoin Core. And the reason why it's working well right now is just because it's not used as much as Bitcoin. But if the use of Litecoin increase in the coming months or the coming years, they're eventually gonna run into the same problem as Bitcoin does. And because they have the same roadmap, the same stuff gonna happen. So I don't see Litecoin as a very interesting coin. Monero is an interesting coin, to be honest. They make a different set of trade-off. So they are not as scalable as Bitcoin Cash for technical reason. But they trade that for a much higher degree of privacy. So I think this is something that people are going to be interested in. There is, some competition between the two, but I think that those, Bitcoin Cash and Monero can find their use case. Dash is probably the most direct competitor to Bitcoin Cash. I'd say, where it compared to Dash, there is much more deployed infrastructure for Bitcoin Cash right now, just because it's just a fork of Bitcoin. So anyone that, support Bitcoin can support Bitcoin Cash very, very easily. If, a few days of work and get Bitcoin Cash support. Also, I think that Dash makes some unproven assumption in its security model for private send and instant send and all those features. So I have some doubts about that. Like, are they actually, that private and that secure? I'm not sure. But Dash is certainly one of the biggest competitor. But there is also something you said that I would like to come back on, and I would like to reframe a bit, where you need like digital gold and digital cash. And I actually don't agree with that. Because we already have gold, right? So, gold is there. It's there to stay. It's a proven store of value. It's been the case for thousands of years, quite literally. And what happened, like, this is essentially like, if you want to take like one history lesson, this is the same stuff happening again and again, right? People have some hard currency to begin with. Society develop around that hard currency, and the economics develops, and everything is good. But then, people start realizing that transacting with gold is actually not that convenient. And so they start building system on top of it, like fiat currency and stuff like that. And at some point, the fiat currency system end up being abused, and you see an economic collapse. And this is what has happened to pretty much every civilization that have existed out there. And so if you want to break that cycle of human civilization growing and then collapsing, we need to have a currency that is that have both the good characteristic of something like gold and also the convenience of something like cash, right? And separating the two is why we ended up in that cycle of stuff breaking up again and again. I don't see a lot of value in a cryptocurrency that would be digital gold, because we already have gold, right? So it's just like, you wouldn't use digital mail or email if it took, 2 days to arrive and cost you, 30 cents or whatever. I don't know how much a mail costs in the US, but, you wouldn't use that, right? You use email because it's like, it arrives almost instantly, and it's very cheap, and it's much more convenient than an actual paper mail, right? So, the same way you want to have digital gold, but that you can transact, instantly around the world for very cheap, or you have not created anything valuable.
Yeah, no, I in general, I agree with you that this is very dangerous where they're taking Bitcoin right now. And that's why I question if this isn't being done on purpose to try to destroy Bitcoin. Because if Bitcoin does not have any of its sort of digital cash properties, this has actually been one of the sort of things that people who hate Bitcoin have said to us in the past is what really is backing Bitcoin. And it's like, well, it's a transaction currency. It's actually cash. It's, you can transfer value across the world in seconds for almost no cost. That's the real value of it. If you take that part away from it, then what is the real value of it? And it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in the coming months and years, to see if Bitcoin has major problems at some point, and maybe it will be on purpose purpose. And maybe this is all being done by the globalists and the banksters to try to destroy Bitcoin, because after that happens, they can come out and say, well, don't ever touch cryptocurrencies again. Just you better trust our central bank cryptocurrency now. And so that might be part of their big plan.
Yeah, that's one of the stuff that scare me a bit, is like the direction they are taking in Bitcoin right now is I think not very sustainable. And if the whole stuff crashes, it's going to be a big step back for the whole crypto market, I think, because a lot of people are going to, associate all the cryptocurrency, and if like the biggest one doesn't work, then
yeah, absolutely, that might be part of their plan.
We need to regain a lot of trust from the public, right? So a lot of people think that's orchestrated. I don't know. I don't like to make. I like to have very much, like fact-based, like I'm a bit of an engineer. So I don't make that much assumption. That's definitely possible that it's intentional. That's definitely possible that it's just like sheer stupidity. And that's definitely possible that it depends on the people. Maybe some of them are actually doing it intentionally, and some of them, are just going along with it, not realizing what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. For people out there, I wrote an article on the Dollar Vigilante. I'll put a screenshot up of it now. It's called "The Globalist Plan to Blame Bitcoin for Biblical Level Collapse in 2018." So I actually think I can sort of see that they're planning to, whenever this next financial crisis happens, and there's going to be one, absolutely, and it's probably going to be in 2018, I think they're going to blame it on the cryptocurrencies. So there's a lot of crazy stuff going on. So definitely be wanting to pay attention to all this sort of stuff. So as the lead developer for Bitcoin Cash, is there anything that you can tell us about upcoming developments with Bitcoin Cash? Anything going on with your development?
Yeah, so I think the two most interesting stuff that are going on right now when it comes to the development, the first one is Cash Shuffle. So it's a privacy feature that is right now in alpha. It's in alpha, right? So you can use it, but be careful. It's just the beginning. So we want to have more tests around it before deploying it by default. But Cash Shuffle is a system that when people send transaction, rather than sending the transaction directly on the network, the transaction is gonna be sent to some server, and the server is gonna take the transaction from several people and mix them all together, so you don't really know, what money of what person is going where. And this is done in such a manner where you don't need to trust that server. So that server cannot, steal your money or anything. And so this is a feature we want to deploy by default in many wallets, maybe in the coming year or so. Right now, this is just the beginning. But I think this is interesting. The second stuff that is interesting that is going on is maybe the address format change. So that Bitcoin have those one plus a bunch of numbers and letters behind them. Bitcoin Cash is used the same as Bitcoin right now, and it's creating a lot of confusion for users because they're saying Bitcoin to Bitcoin Cash address or Bitcoin Cash to Bitcoin addresses, and people get confused. So we want that stuff, to be really ubiquitous. You don't want your payment experience to be something exciting, right? You want your payment experience to just, go through and you get whatever you paid for, and that's done, and you forget about it, right? So we want to remove like this kind of bad aspect of their experience, and one of them is like, I am sending the right currency to the right address. We don't want people to be wondering about that, so we are changing the address format. It's coming in January.
That's great. Exciting stuff. I'll definitely be following it. I actually own more Bitcoin Cash than I own Bitcoin, not in total dollar amount, but in total coin amount, because I actually bought some after the fork, and I haven't actually bought any Bitcoin in quite a while, actually. And actually, I've been selling a little bit of Bitcoin lately. So I definitely am thinking that Bitcoin Cash might do better than Bitcoin over the next few years, but we'll see. There's lots of stuff going on. Who knows what's going to happen, but it's exciting times to be in the cryptocurrency space. And for that reason, you should definitely come check it out here in Acapulco, Mexico in February. We're going to have an Acapulco from February 15th to the 18th. On the 18th is an all cryptocurrency day called CryptoPoco. And then the day after that, we even have the Dollar Vigilante Summit, which is a whole full day just based on finance and economics and investment and things like that. So from February 15th to the 19th, a full 5 days of stuff to come. come. And Amaury, you're going to be coming here to speak at CryptoPoco. Really looking forward to that. Is there anything else you want to let people know? Maybe your Twitter handle or anything you want to let people know?
Yeah, so I'm known as Diddlenix, DAADLNEX, pretty much everywhere on Twitter, on GitHub, on whatever. If you see that handle somewhere, it's very it's probably me or someone trying to pretend there is someone trying to pretend they are me. So if you want to know about me or follow what I do, you Diddlenix, DAADLNEX, and you're gonna find me. Except that, excited to go at Acapulco. Many people there that I've met, in other contexts before. But meeting them all together there is kind of exciting. There is, I think, Rick Favinge, that is from the Pirate Party, that is also involved in Bitcoin Cash. There is also Vit Jedilica from Liberland that I've been following, as a European. That seems like a very, very interesting project to me. There is like a ton of people, Roger Ver, obviously. So I'm very excited about going there. And as for Bitcoin Cash, maybe Reddit or BTC or Bitcoin Cash to get news about that. Various people, I don't know, like follow Roger Ver, follow Jianhu, follow myself, follow whoever on social media, and you would get news about that. And yeah, that's pretty much it, I guess.
That's great. Yeah. And, there's going to be so many amazing people in Acapulco. And just so you know, just yesterday, I've been so busy with everything going on in the cryptocurrency space that just yesterday I asked our people, I said, how many people have registered for Acapulco so far? And the number they told me, it's already way more than registered last year. And we still have 2 months to go. And most people registered in the last few months. So it's going to be absolutely massive this year. So if you're out there and you want to go, definitely make sure you register soon, because it looks like almost everything is going to sell out. They can only hold about 1,500 people total at the hotel. At the conference room, and it looks like it's going to be around that number. So definitely, if you want to make sure you get go to narcopoco.com and register. And I'd like to thank Amaury Sechet for coming on and telling us about Bitcoin Cash. Very interesting. It's going to be very interesting times ahead. It'll be interesting to see where we're at even in February in Acapulco. I'm sure lots of things will change by that time as well. So if you like this video, please like, subscribe, share down below. Yeah, go ahead.
I say this is moving crazy fast, so I expect to have a lot of news and new development that are going to be going on since, when Acapulco happened. I mean, and then, the whole space is moving at crazy speed. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like 2 months is like 20 years, 10 years ago. Yeah, it's like 2 days is a lot. Like if you're gone for 2 days, like so many things can change. There's so much stuff happening. So if you like this video, please like, subscribe, share down below, especially share it with people who don't understand exactly what's going on with Bitcoin. I think Amaury gave a lot of good information on what has been going on and what you need to know, especially if you're a freedom lover and if you're not a fan of governments and central banks, you want to know what's going on in this space. So that's it for Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. Peace, love, and anarchy.
The most important and profitable investment conference in the world is returning in February 2018. In 2016, the TDV Internationalization and Investment Conference, led by world-famous investor and freedom fighter Jeff Berwick, focused on Bitcoin when it was at $400. It also focused on gold mining stocks, featured by Ed Bugos, which ended up gaining hundreds of % that year. In 2017, the TDV Summit focused heavily on cryptocurrencies. Many speakers pounded the table to buy Bitcoin at $1,000. It has since hit $10,000. And others focused on other cryptos, such as Dash, which was $20 at the time and is currently over $600. If you attended the last 2 years and took advantage of all the information you learned, you would have become wealthy. And on February 19th, the TDV Internationalization and Investment Conference is back. Speakers include Jeff Berwick, who will give out his next cryptocurrency and ICO picks, as well as laying out how to internationalize your lifestyle to become a prior taxpayer using the 5-flag lifestyle and cryptocurrencies. TDV's senior analyst Ed Bugos will lay out his gold mining stock picks for 2018, as well as what he foresees for the markets as a whole. David Morgan, the most respected silver analyst in the world, will give his insights on where silver is headed in 2018. Vix Ware of RoadToRuta.com will expand on cryptocurrencies and precious metal strategies. Other speakers include G. Edward Griffin, Jeffrey Tucker, Roger Ver, Trace Mayer, and more. The TDV Summit is held on February 19th, and we recommend coming to Anarchapulco from February 15th to 17th and Cryptopulco on February 18th for 5 straight days of freedom, inspiration, investment ideas, analysis, and recommendations. You can find out more at tdvinvestmentsummit.com.